Hello everybody and welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, the first half of tonight's live, get my words out in a minute, will be just a quick bit about Cryptid that'll cover the premiere that's just been on. And then after that, it's an informal one. So you might not want to stick around for that, but we're going to have a walk down memory lane and discuss some of the things that we remember from being kids. But don't talk about them in the chat yet, because I've got some questions that I want to ask and I want to see how many answers are the same. But Aaron raised a comment in the chat. Like, tonight's live stream was about missing people and the cryptid connection. And what I mean by that is areas in the UK where there are cryptid reports, UFO reports, reports of the paranormal, of predator-like creatures, any strange activity, but it has to include cryptids, where missing people or strange vanishings have happened. So the first one we did, I can see you all in the chat. I'm not going to read out all the names, obviously, but I can join in the chat tonight. I've got that all set up. Well, the first case we did was Trevine Evans. I just want to get the dates for you. So Trevine vanished, one second, on the 16th of June, 1990. She opened a shop in the morning. She was in Llangollen, which is a small mining town in Wales. She told people that she was going out later on in the evening, and she nipped out in the dinner time just to get some flowers and some fruit, and she was never seen again. Now, in the Llangollen area, there are a number of reports of large, muscular, bear-like creatures within the woodland. So the mining town's here. You've got a railway line, and then you've got a river that goes on the other side. So the small town sits in the middle, and here, obviously, it's a national park. It's Wales. So all of the things that we look for in a cryptid area, and she's never been seen since. I think her husband was arrested and questioned, but nobody's ever been charged with her death. And usually in cases where someone's had a fall or a mechanical injury, or maybe they fell into the river, eventually, if it's not them that are found, it's their items that are found. So shoes will float, coats will float, things like that. If it's in a woodland setting, eventually a dog is going to dig it up, or foxes are getting into it, and you'll see some form of human attire, because humans don't walk around the woodlands completely naked. So nothing's ever been found like that in the Llangollen area. And Aaron raised the point that, was I aware of human mutilation in the UK? And I'm very aware of human mutilation. There are a number of cases, and I won't discuss them tonight, but we can do an entire live on them, where just one limb of a person's been found, so just an arm or just a leg, or a torso or a head, something like that, and the other parts of the body have been predated upon. And the case is always tagged as no suspicious circumstances or not within the public interest. So it's a very easy way for the coroner to close down that case. And there are a number of them each year. You can apply under the Freedom of Information Act, but you don't really get very much when they come back. They really, really are redacted. Very little information in them. So there wasn't really anything more on Treveline's case. But I spoke to a lady who lived there, about 2018, 2019, and she'd moved into a new cottage there. And she's a herbalist, bit of a hedge witch. And she had some strange experiences going on the property. So her husband was, they were having a brush fire, and her husband said something that he couldn't see, but he could hear it, came skidding down the bank on the farm and absolutely terrified him. He ran into the house. They've got a dog on the property, and the dog was not happy. He wouldn't settle. He was a rescue dog. And he would run to the fence and would just bark continuously at the wood line. And if she'd have let him, she said he'd have just been there 24/7. That's all he did. And he was really unhappy, and it made him sick and it made him ill. So they let him go. They sent him to a different rescue, and he was much happier there. She got a different dog, and she said that dog's not upset, but it still watches the wood line. They've had some strange things happen around the cottage. And it culminated really, and she was walking the dog, and she said she's on a plateau, so you look down, you can see the river, and there's a small track that goes off to an abandoned farm, and she seen something really big and bulky and black come running. And she said, at first I thought it was like a huge black bull, and then I realised it was upright on 2 legs, and it was very, very canine looking, at a canine snout. Let me just get I need to get the name of what she called it. I don't want to put words in her mouth. 1 second. Let me find it. She said it had, I can't say if it had canine legs facing black, back or front. It was definitely upright, just like a human would be. And it stopped at the end of the path, and it was just stood looking at the bridge with its chest heaving. She said, I actually thought, oh shit, because the cows roam free here. You know, she said it wasn't that. It was a giant wolf, and it was jet black. But it was walking upright on 2 legs. It had big broad shoulders and arms, and it had a thin waist compared to the rest of its body. Now that is a typical dogman description, isn't it? And that's in the Llangollen area. Now, also in the Llangollen area, as I say, are a number of reports of thick, black, muscular bears. One couple saw much further north. Well, not, I say much further, but further north at the Ponderosa Cafe. And they described it as a bear that stood upright on 2 legs. And then there's a YouTube channel, Mikey the Pikey is called. I've known him a long time. And he's a wild camper, and he films when he's out and about. You'd actually probably enjoy his videos. And he contacted me because he saw on a camp with his son, the dog really reacted. The dog kind of put him onto the fact that something was mooching about around the camp. And there's also been reports of strange howls, whoops and screams and growls in the area, which are interesting. One thing I haven't looked at, and I will do, is any missing cattle or pets or animal mutilations going on. And if any other people have gone missing along that perimeter between the river and the railway line. And I'll probably look a little bit further out as well, because you just don't know, do you? But it's interesting, and it will lead to another podcast. Let me just go on to this next case that we had. Stephen just had a very interesting question. He's put, why can't there still be bears in parts of the wooded areas in Britain? And the cat, I agree with you entirely. I haven't got my map on, but I'll get it up in a minute. In the Hackney Marshes, down south, there have been a number of reports of bear-like creatures. And 2 bears were actually found there beheaded, believe it or not. So there are, that was only in the 70s, 80s, something like that. I think there are. There's a Loch Lomond bear. People make reports of seeing them up there in Loch Lomond. And when you find lots of wild camping reports, those are the areas that you tend to find bear-like creatures. So, A, there are still bears in the UK. I mean, even in Rivington, you got the Rivington Bearman account. Or B, when you have an experience with a cryptid creature, and that creature's down on all 4s, and it's really big, and it's, what do you call it? What your brain goes through a file of facts of, is it this, is it that, is it that? And I think bear is a really good thing to land on, because it fits, doesn't it? Hair covered, thick, muscular. I'm not mentioning the bear in the Forest of Dean, right? But the Forest of Dean I'm going to mention in a second. So yeah, there could possibly be. And in those areas are where we have these mystery limbs. So Mike in the chat has just brought up the New Forest. And 1 second, it's going so quickly. In the Forest of Dean. So in the Forest of Dean, there is a case of 1 foot that's within a sock, that's within a trainer. And that case is no suspicious circumstances. So they don't know who it belongs to, but it was found, the training shoe was found, I think it was a New Balance, with a foot in it, still in a sock. And the case was closed down, and there was no investigation done into who it was or anything like that. And it was just said that, well, yes, they could do DNA. Joe's just raising the chat, why didn't they do DNA? I don't know, Joe. I couldn't tell you, but it was no suspicious circumstances. So somebody was in the park that day walking the dog, or, you know, having a picnic, and their foot fell off and they didn't notice till they got home. And they thought, oh, it's a long way to go back. I'm probably not going to go back. I'll be fine. And didn't report it. Other than that, I don't know. But that's the only way I can think of it being in no suspicious circumstances. Or somebody's walking from the hospital to home with a bag full of body parts and one of them drops. Murder, I suppose, that's high up there. But you think if it was murder, they would have done DNA. You know, they'd have forensically looked at the bone to see if it was snapped or sawn, or there was any teeth marks, or, you know, there's a lot they can do these days, isn't there? But they didn't do any of that. They just said, no, nothing to look at here, folks. Nothing to look at all. You're okay to go into the Forest of Dean. Don't worry about it. The national parks will not give figures on how many people go missing or are injured, whether that be a broken ankle, a fall, anything. They will not give you those figures, and you can't get them anywhere. So we don't actually know if anybody is making a note of that or collecting that data. I would imagine somebody is somewhere, because we've got these cases. And I know Steve earlier said that he lives on the northeast coast, and there are a number of places where Brian lives in Skegness and Cleethorpes of human feet. More than 2 cases. Because I remember we did it's in an earlier video that we did last year. I think there was 3 feet, all from different people, found on that bit of the Yorkshire coast. No suspicious circumstances. And in fact, the police went to the newspapers and asked, and I'm being completely legit with this, you can go and check it on Google. They went to the newspapers and asked if anybody had lost a foot. Now, they were not overrun with phone calls. Nobody was out there that had lost a foot. You know, British police at their finest. No, I shouldn't say that, should I? But yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? They wanted to know, Joe, if the universities or the hospitals had lost a foot. Just absolutely unbelievable. But if you can Google it, if you put body part found in the UK, it's quite disturbing. As you know, I work the cases on the Irwell where I live, and there was a lady in 2018 just vanished. This time of year, actually, she was in Manchester city centre and she was shopping for her grandchildren. Tells me she wasn't planning on going anywhere. And then she suddenly, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so not late at night, she hadn't had a drink or anything like that. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she just suddenly vanishes. And a year later, same kind of year, they find her foot in the River Irwell. And they pull out the foot, and the police take it, and they say no suspicious circumstances. She was probably just really not happy and threw herself in there. Now, I don't know how you can tell that from just one foot. She could have been cut, stabbed, shot, strangled, you know, the whole 9 yards, right? Oh, Diddy's in the chat, Mark. What are we going to do?
Better not have any baby lotion at home.
Do your frowny face. Come over. That face you do. What if it's the real Diddy?
That one?
Yeah, that one. Yes, she was, Brian, absolutely. But what's more disturbing is a further female disappeared on the same river, a school teacher who just vanished. She was at home at night and she had a dressing gown on and her pyjamas when a friend left, and she suddenly just vanished. And they said, oh, she must have gone out and walked to the river and slipped in. And that's why she's in the river. There are only 2 of the many females that have done this on the Irwell. And then the first lady that went missing, her body parts were then found. So not the year after when they found the foot, the year again, they find the body parts upstream 20 miles away. Do they open the case? No. The verdict doesn't change whatsoever, and it is still no suspicious circumstances. What must her poor family think? You know, what must her poor family think? So let me just get me back onto my notes. I've just done, I tried to do some from all around the UK, so I wasn't just sticking in one area. Now we get to the Moncton case. Let me get the dates for this one. I want to make it perfect. I think it was last Christmas time, wasn't it? If I remember rightly. So on the Ayrshire coast, so that's the northeast of Scotland, not that far above from where I live. You go through Penrith and then you onto the Ayrshire coast. Oh, and I brew up, my hands are killing. I can't keep holding my cup. I've run out of options now, though, haven't I? There's not a cup that can work for me. I can't even hold them little tiny ones that I usually have now. And I'm not going into a sippy cup. I just refuse. Let me find. I need to find. I'm looking for the case of the lady that was supposedly eaten by foxes in the UK. So, one second. It was in the same area where Police Scotland were looking for a baboon. They'd been out a number of years before. Right, there we go. I just want to get the date right and make sure it's absolutely perfect. There we go. So it was January, 10th of January 2022. It was reported in the newspaper that on December the 19th, a woman, police had launched a search at that point because they'd found the car and she wasn't in it. So what had happened was, the day before, about 11:20 p.m. at the night, she'd rang in and said that the car had broken down. Just let me make sure that's correct. Yeah, that the car had broken down and she was waiting for like the AA or the RAC. So like, what do they call that? Roadside recovery to come and pick her up. So I checked the weather. It wasn't like howling a gale. There was no snow. It was about 8 degrees, so actually a tiny bit warmer than it is today. So she's in the car. She's warm. She's not in a bad area. It's kind of like a seaside town at the front, and just fields and rural areas for quite a few miles actually, in the opposite direction. So it's 11:20 at night. The first thing you're going to notice is the light. So if you're a lone female and you phone road recovery and they've said to you, they'll be there in an hour, love, you're not going to leave the car because you're safe in the car. Yeah. Car door's locked. Well, you're warm. You're safer than getting out and walking is what I mean, Matt. Yeah. Right? And you've got your mobile phone with you, so you can phone the police at any point. But that's... This is what the police are saying. I'm not saying this is what happened. This is what the police say happened. That she then got out of the car and didn't walk the lane as I would, waiting for a car to come down and say, hey, can you give us a lift? My car's broke down. Or can you run me to the garage? Or can you run me into town? She walked in the opposite direction into dark fields. She was in her 50s, so similar age to me. Last thing I'd be doing is traipsing through a field. Have you ever tried walking through a cow field? Mm-hmm. You'd break your leg instantly as you're walking through pitch dark. There's no lights out there. We were talking about it before. Rural communities don't have street lights. Who's going to pay for them? The towns and cities do, and major roads, and it comes as quite a shock to some people abroad that, but there are no street lighting out there in the countryside in the UK. You know, you can see like the lights of a farm, and you can see by the lights of car. I'll give you for instance, last night me and Mark went up Winter Hill. We went somewhere first. We went for Queen's Park, didn't we? And Mark took the dog and they had a walk, and then we had a cup of tea there, a cup of coffee there, and then we went up George's Lane, and it was cold and it was a bit misty, but it wasn't. It was big coat weather, but it wasn't bad. And as the bottom of George's Lane was absolutely fine, and we went 100 feet up, didn't we? Yeah. And the next thing, we just drove into a cloud. It was black. You couldn't see. We put the torch on, and you just couldn't even see the torch. So that's how quickly things could go wrong if you're in a rural area. So the last thing I would have done last night, if we'd broken down, is get out of that car and try to walk those fields in the opposite direction of where the houses are. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They don't tell you how she died. So there's no died of this cause or had a heart attack or, an illness or nothing. And they just said that when they found her, she'd been predated on by badgers and foxes. And they think that that's what had killed her. And it makes no sense whatsoever, does it? Oh, we got trolls. Oh, there's a lot of them, isn't there? Never mind. Just keep throwing them out, Joe. Yeah. Well, Harris has raised a point. Maybe she saw something in the fields, and that was what I was going to say. The only reason I would leave that car is if A, I was more frightened in it and I had to flee, or B, there was something in those fields that she thought was a person with a torch or was a help in some way. That was what I was going to ask. What other reason can you think of? Now, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, put yourself in the same situation. So we're talking a small town, and when I say town to the Americans, I should probably say village, fishing village with houses, and then it goes into the rural exactly as it does in America, and then that rolls out into the fields and the woodlands and the mountains. So I don't have an OnlyFans link, unfortunately. I missed the boat on that one. I weren't young. If I'd have been younger, I'd have jumped on that one, but I'm quite sure nobody would pay to see me in another. Right. So yeah, what would she do? I think, right, I'm gonna stay in car. But what if something frightened her? Do you remember those cases from last year in America and the year before, where a number of males and females had been found dead, and the wording that they used was attacked by unknown animals? And there was a few cases in France as well where people were attacked by unknown animals. And there was one case in France where the dog actually brought home a human head. And that case was marked as no suspicious circumstances, whatever that is in French, because I don't speak French, but same stamp of approval, don't need to be looking at this kind of thing. And me and Jojo talked about it a number of times. What if there's some kind of noise, sound, sonar thing that turns these animals? How am I trying to word it? Have you noticed in the... Yeah, kind of, but have you noticed in the news, I said it to you the other day, people seem to be throwing themselves into bear pits in the zoos.
Yeah.
So it's like completely like, what are you doing randomly? There's been about 6 because I get newspaper alerts. So I'll get, like, if something happens in Germany during the night, unfortunately, it'll give me an alert about it and it'll tell me. So I know for a fact that about 3 females and 2 males in the last 6 months have put themselves into bear and big cat enclosures. Is that something in control, some kind of weaponized noise? And I ask that because either side of these reports, there are 2 separate reports from people about a hum that made them feel like infrasound, like they dropped to their knees, they felt sick, their head were banging, the whole 9 yards. There's also a labyrinth there, you know. In ancient times, there's a labyrinth below the ground, and there's a standing stone that's flicked over. And I know this because I worked a case. A woman who started out was one of my witnesses, who is one of my long-term friends now. She lives in the Carrick Maybole area of Ayrshire. And she remembers being a young girl with her dad, driving in the car. Obviously, mum and dad are in the front, and her and her brothers are in the back, and they're going through the Carrick Hills there. And her dad slams on, and he was like my dad. He was a big, like, brawler of a man. He slams on and said, "What the fucking hell was that?" And he jumped out of the car to go and see, and he said, this really big, muscular, kind of similar to your experience, Mike, like a reddishy, like the same colour as the rose bay is when you get to autumn, winter, that kind of reddishy, like an oat leaf is what I'm trying to get to. Orange. Yeah, like a reddishy orange, a persimmon colour, that kind of thing. Like a red setter dog, that's it, that's what like a red setter dog. And he was convinced, and she said, people really took the Michael out of him, Deb, for years about that, and he was adamant that that's what he saw. And there's also another report from some young lads who were wild camping in the area, who were chased by the big, hairy rar. Oh, so it was a Scottish word. I'll have to pull my map up to get it out. So they saw something very, very similar, but in the 90s, so like 20 years later. And it's another area where you've got all these people in the UK that are kind of making reports of these shadowing beings or alien abduction, animal mutilations, areas of high strangeness, let's call them that. And the Monkston case is the most strange of all, isn't it? Now, I think the next one is Box Hill, isn't it, we did? Yeah, Box Hill. Now, Box Hill is an area in the south, I think it's Surrey, where there are a number of Bigfoot, or we would call British Bigfoot. And I must explain, underneath, during World War II, there were a number of tunnels that were built in the area, so just north of Box Hill. And Box Hill got the name because box is the privet plant, and it was grown for wood in the UK, and it's incredibly strong and it grows very, very straight. So it was used for years in wood making, and that was why the area became known as Box Hill. And it's kind of a high point in the landscape. So there are reports from all around it. So from people who were picking food and medicines in the fields as children during the war. Saw a giant hairy ape man at one of the ancient barrows. And someone was up there and they were training on the steps. They were running up and down the steps doing a training exercise. And they realised that in the background, without really thinking about it, they could hear this kind of wood knocking. And they didn't take any notice of it whatsoever. They just put it to one side. And when they finished the training, they sat down on the steps and they were having a drink, cooling off. And from behind them, they can hear somebody walking, so they think it's just like a dog walker. So they do that thing you do, you know, when you scrooch like that to let something go past. And when they did that, I want to get her words precisely. 1 second. I realised that the person walking down the stairs had stopped. I could hear the sound of breathing. I had an unsettled feeling come over me that I was being watched. So I turned and I looked over my right shoulder. And standing there, about 10 metres back to my right side and up the steps, was what I honestly believed to be some kind of ape. Now the fur was a brown colour with patches of grey, and the face was very human with a flat nose, but the jaw was really big, and it looked out of proportion to the head, which was domed at the top. The animal stood on 2 legs, but appeared to slump forward, and the arms were long in proportion to the body. The animal was thickly built, and I can only say solid muscle. It was frightening, the build of this thing. I'm not sure the height from the angle I was at. I'd only estimate probably 6 feet, but I'm not sure. The animal just stood staring at me for about 30 seconds before turning around and walking off, but still watching me at the same time. And he could smell a awful smell in the air. And it was in the same area. Date was like, let me get the date of this case. 2012, so... Oh, there's no date. There's another report, and it's a guy who lives in the same area, and he's saying there's a cut through there in the woods, and it was so dark that night that unless you knew that path, you wouldn't know how to go in. He said, and as I'm walking through it, something came crashing through the undergrowth to my left, and you could hear it skidding along the ground, and it was pitch black. I let out a scared scream, thinking it was a badger, and I thought it'll hear me and run off, but it didn't run off. I expected my dog to defend me, and it didn't. It acted very strange, and it didn't look back. It just kept going, as if to say, I'm not staying here. And my mind immediately began to process the fact that the noise was heavy, and the skidding noise was the sound of something large. It was not a dog, not a fox, and not a deer. Sorry, someone's WhatsApping me. I didn't get rid of it. He said a week later at dusk, we were on the heathland, which skirted another bit of the woodland, and I began to hear knocking on the trees that was coming from deeper within the wood. My dog looked at me, and I looked at him, and they just got out of there. He said, once again, thanks to my dog, you know, I was fine. I don't think he realised how much danger he's in. I honestly think when creatures are seen, I don't think they're all accidental accounts. I think sometimes they show themselves for some reason. I think what's far more scarier than that is the ones that we spoke about where you can't see them and they resemble that thing. I don't know what the correct word is for that thing in the Predator film, so I know it's not professional, but that's what I'm going to refer to it as, because I don't know what that's called. A being that moves almost in a very fluid way, so you can see the brush moving and you can hear the footsteps and things moving, but it has an almost prismatic look, as if it's mirroring or reflecting back its area, so you can't see it. I don't know if that's natural ability of some kind of technical weapon. I have no idea. Yeah, but we get lots and lots of reports like that. And then we had the poor young lass who went missing in the area. Her name was Ruth Wilson. She actually got into a taxi, got out at the bottom of Box Hill, and was never seen again. And there've been numerous looks into her case over the years, absolutely hundreds of them. There's no reasoning for why that would have happened. And like I say, in all these cases, you tend to find something eventually. And it might be years and years after, but a dog will drag some out, rats will do it, foxes will do it, anything that can get in there, it'll drag the coat out, it'll drag shoes out and all kinds of things. And there's a case that I'm not going to go too much into because it's quite personal, but we know somebody who went missing, don't we?
Yeah.
And they left the house and they were fully clothed and they had an entire suitcase with them. And they're actually on CCTV going with the suitcase. And it's a big one, it's not a small one, it's a big one. And he completely vanished. And they only found him about 2 years. He was gone for a long, long time. They found him about 2 years ago in a small wood at the back. And I said to Mark, where's the suitcase? And he was like, what? And I said, where's the suitcase that you left with? If they're saying that you went straight there, now I missed a bit out, that was completely searched. When the area was searched, everything was searched, helicopter out and everything. Every year on his birthday or the anniversary of him going away, it was investigated again, nothing. And in that area where it had been investigated, that's where they found him. And they said it was kind of at his own hand. But if it was at his own hand, where's the blooming suitcase?
Oh, yeah.
That should have been in there with him, shouldn't it?
Definitely.
And he was heading towards a train station, so there's no... train stations in the UK have a lot of CCTV. So normally if you're near a train station, they can see you coming in, they can see you going, what train you got on, the whole 9 yards, and he didn't. So I don't know if it was a sloppy investigation or... I don't know. I think sometimes when males go missing, they have it harder than females. I know people say, oh, you know, say like if I went missing, they'd probably not bother looking for me. But if an upper class lass went missing, then they would, wouldn't they? They'd go out and probably look for me. I think it's worse for men. I think we expect men to tough it out and not have any problems or anything like that. So they just disregard them when they go missing. And we don't know that all of these reports of missing people aren't cryptid related. If you'd have asked me that 20 years ago, I'd have said, don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. Why would there be a connection? And then I worked the cases on the Irwell. That book is still sat. I cannot put that book out. I can't. It churns my stomach so much. Because when I started looking, how many men did I find, Matt? It was man after man after man that they pulled out of there. And it was just no suspicious circumstances. No suspicious circumstances. And they only count the 8 miles of Manchester. Right? And that river runs for 25 miles. And there's 5 rivers running to the Irwell. None of that is counted. So I found 220 from 1850, don't get me wrong, but the majority of them were from the 1970s upwards. There were areas where 3 men were pulled out a month after each other at the same lock. No suspicious circumstances. A month after each other. So one lad got pulled out. Month later, another lad gets pulled out. Month later, another gets... It's that bad that the locals call it the devil's urinal. And there are cryptid cases all along that route. And along the rivers where that runs into. Bloody hell, we have got a lot of trolls in, haven't we? Really, everyone's a tid left because it's Christmas. But when I raised it, people said I was crackers. One of those cases... And regular listeners will know this case, so I won't go on about it too much. But one of those cases was a young lad who wasn't from round our way, and he was down at what we call bowlers. So what would that be?
Park.
Trafford Park, yeah, to people who don't live in the area, Trafford Park. And that's where the Manchester Ship Canals runs. And he phoned his parents, and his parents could hear howling and screaming. And they were on the phone with him for an hour and a half. Get this. So mum's on the phone to him on his mobile, and she phones Manchester Police 999. Every single call that goes to 999, no matter where you are in the UK, is recorded. Every single call. So mum's on the phone saying, please help him. My son David's, I can hear him screaming. And some these I'll do it if you go back and look in just put the River Irwell in or the Pusher, and it'll put one of my videos will come up. But basically for an hour and a half they heard that boy screaming and howling, and then it goes quiet. There's nothing. So the next day they do a search and they don't find anything, and they say that they searched the riverbanks backwards and forwards, and they did it for like 6 hours. 4 weeks later, his uncle found his phone there. And do you know what they said? The phone call didn't record. So that hour and a half where she's on the phone to the operator and she's got her mobile phone like that so they can hear her boy howling, it wasn't taped. But it's like, nothing to look at here. Don't worry about it. He's just one of 88 of them. 88 of them. And do you know what they say? Oh, they were all out drinking. Some of them boys went at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Some went from a bail hostel. Some were shopping, like that lady. I get that some of them went in at night because they'd been clubbing. But even if 88 of them were accidents, why aren't there any CCTV there? Why isn't there any way to help somebody get out of there? You know, it's just absolutely madness, isn't it? You know, and like I say, that's a strong correlation of a place where you've got lots of missing people. They're not the only ones. I seen somebody write, just a second while I put it up. I saw somebody write one down and I thought, oh, he's right. Let me keep looking. Oh, it's another town name where it were happening, and I thought, oh, I know where he means. Oh, that'll annoy me, that now. Yeah, Salford. Jessica's saying Salford, but yeah, there was another case and I seen it go past, but never mind. Never mind. Right, so let's have a look at our last case tonight, and then we're going to go to nostalgia. So 1 second. What was our last one? Police Scotland. So, in another place in Scotland where you have reports of upright creatures that look ape-like, there are also dogman or werewolf reports, so something up on 2 legs with a snout, ears on top of head, the whole 9 yards. Lots of those experiences where you're being shadowed again, so you can hear something at the side of you, but you can't see it, or people are wild camping and they hear things around the tent or around the boffies and they can't see them. So bit like the big grey man of Ben Dewey kind of thing, but not exactly the right area for that. And a chap who is a well-known camper and walker said to the walking crew that he was with, he felt a bit off and he was going to go back to the tent. So instantly you think, oh, he feels a bit off, he's fell off. Well, he didn't. He went back to the tent, he put his porridge on, that was cooking. Inside the tent was his walking sticks, his coat, his mobile phone and his other equipment, and he was nowhere to be found. He just absolutely vanished off the face of the earth. And like I say, it's in an area where there are lots of cases. Let me just pull one for you. One of the cases that I find really important is these 2 wild men that were seen hunting a deer in 2016. Now, this guy's coming back, he said, I was up near Loch Awe, and he said there's lots of places up there where you can go off track. It was 1 a.m, March 2016. I was driving back from my friend's house. He hadn't had a drink. As he's driving along, he sees a deer come running out in front of the car and go over. And as he looks to see where the deer's come from, what he describes as a hairy wild man is in flight after the deer. And he jumps the road in one leap and keeps going. And as he looks back, there's a smaller one that steps out, realises it's been seen, And instead of running that way, it went back into the woodlands really, really quickly. I just want to give you the description. And he slammed on the brakes and he said, I hit the brakes and I turned to look where the deer had come out of the trees. And off to my left, I saw what looked like another one of them emerging. This figure was smaller, younger, not as big and muscled, but still a wild man type thing, all the same. He said the first one that crossed over the road after the deer was, I'd guess, about 8 feet tall. He had hair all over his body and he was completely naked. It was hard to tell the colour of the hair at night, but it was dark. He said it's not a huge road, but even so, its stride must have been at least 6 feet to cover the distance in one leap like that. Oh, pardon me, I can't hold my cup to get a drink. And that's within walking distance of where this hiker's gone missing. Pardon me. Right, let's check this one down now. I don't need that one. So I can read the chat again. So, from that, bit of a weird one, I got to pull Facebook up when I get me questions. People have been asking me to do a different kind of live stream because they say, Deb, I love it when you do Bigfoot stuff, but I like it when you're funny as well and you tell us about when you were younger. And a lot of people I've noticed in the chat also like talking about things we did when we were younger. So I kind of put some questions together for you guys for a change.
Nostalgia.
Nostalgia questions. Oh, something got me. One sec. I didn't have anywhere to put them, so I had to send them to myself on Facebook. I'm run out of places. Right. Let me pull this near so I can see chat. Right, we're ready. First question. Who remembers getting up in the morning in the summer and blue tits had ate your milk? They'd tapped in through the top and ate it. And in winter, it'd be frozen. In the UK, we had what was called a milk cart, didn't we, Mark? Yeah. Bloody hell. So for anyone not in the UK, it's like a golf cart with milk on the back in trays. And they used to bring you like spuds and orange juice, and especially if you lived out in the rural areas and you couldn't get into town. So we had to have these special boxes made. Everyone had one, didn't they? Does it still happen? Because milkmans are not a big thing anymore, are they?
Still have milkmen come round.
I mean, do the birds still like tap through the top?
No, because they're plastic bottles now, aren't they? So it's harder for them to get.
Oh, yeah, so maybe they were using that to stay alive all winter if they were going for cream. They'll have been after the fat, won't they?
Yep.
But yeah, people are saying, yep, they remember that. Right, ready? 2 things I remember out of my childhood. So I need to know, what was your favourite toffee? Mine was sherbet dibdabs. And what poster did you have in your bedroom? Because I had David Cassidy. David Cassidy. I was obsessed with, what was the name? Those were the days, my friend. She used to wear these top white boots. Someone will say it in case, what was she called? Mary Hopkins. I was obsessed with Mary Hopkins when I was a kid. I wanted to be Mary Hopkins. I used to pull my socks up to my knees so they looked like them white boots that all the older ladies were wearing, and dance to Mary Hopkins. I thought I was going to be on stage and that, but it never happened. Yeah, Debbie had it. And the Bay City Rollers. That'll take some of us back. So for an entire, at least 2 years, every kid in Salford worth their salt got their nana to machine on tartan onto every single piece of clothing that you owned. I even had those socks, me, Joe, that you pulled up to knees that had, I can't remember the names of them all. Every member of the Bay City Rollers on the side of it. We used to sing that song all the time, didn't we? Yeah. So that was one of them. Mark said this one. warming your uniforms on the fire guard in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to have a big metal one in front. I lived on Sutton Flat, so I got to tell you, got to like set the scene. It was a big flat, like an apartment, but we only had one fire in the front room, and it was a coal fire back then. So it would have been 70, 71, 72, something like that. And we used to have a huge fire guard at the front of it. Everyone had one if they had kids. And your mum would dry the washing on it. And then in front of that, you'd have like a maiden or a clothes horse, as the posh people used to say, used to dry clothes on top of that. And then we had this pulley system going on. Do you remember them? I had one in my old house, didn't I? I loved it. Maiden, as I called it. So you put your wet washing on it and you pull it up. And we'd all get up in the morning and put our socks and underwear on there to get warm. And it was so cold that my mum used to put the cooker on in the kitchen and leave the door open for us, because there used to be like literally ice on the windows. And as kids, we used to warm pennies up on the fire and put them on the window, and it used to leave like these little circles. Yeah, it was. And I know kids that my kids say, oh yeah, you had to go to school like uphill twice both ways. But I remember being a kid and it was that cold. We had to wear our coats in the house to play in the bedrooms, because the only room that had any heat was the living room. So every year when the Christmas tree come out, you like, the couch would get pulled right up to the fire, didn't it, Mark? All the furniture went right up to the fire. And then the Christmas tree had loads of space for where it needed to be. And it was like a religion in our house. And you'd be dead warm up front, and the back you'd be like corned beef. Absolutely freezing, yeah. Put another jumper on. Just walking around like 18 jumpers and still freezing. But yeah, that's what I remember. I want to see what you guys are putting in. Making toast on a gas fire with a fork. Oh, Brian, that texts me back. Salad cream butties. I used to love them as a kid. Did you have sugar butties?
Yeah.
No. My Uncle James tried making me one once. My Uncle James is my granddad. He's my dad's uncle who adopted him. So he's my granddad. And he used to try and give me sugar butties. There's no way. Like, I can't even do a banana butty, mate. Sweet things and butties don't go. We were in Cornwall once. We were in cafe. And this woman brought this thing out for me, Mark. And it was a slice of bread, I'm not lying, with cream on and strawberries and another slice of bread on top. But it was like, I didn't know what to do with it. It was very confusing for me. Got more. Oh, dripping on toast. In Scotland, they call that a piece and dougie. I can't remember what they called it in Ireland. It'll come to me while we're chatting. Right, here's a good one. When I was a kid, my mum would kill me. When I say I was poor, I wasn't poor because my parents were lazy, right? My parents both worked 3 jobs. We were poor because we were working class. So when we had to back our books at school, do you remember that? You got your book at school and they were that tight, you had to put a number on every page so they knew you'd not ripped any out. And you had to take it home and back it in wallpaper. So we had to go to my nana's and back ours because she had anaglypta. I am not kidding. That's how... Because in our house, it would have been a choice of wood chip or wood chip, because my mum had kids and animals and my father and boys coming through the house and everything. But obviously, my nan's was, yeah. But yeah. Oh, I remember those duffel coats, HB. Mum took me to Butterwhiffs to get one. So when he from Salford, I'd be like, I remember Butterwhiffs. It was on Regent Road. It was dead posh. It was like this 1950s... Do you know that show? Going up. Are You Being Served? It was like that. It was a proper department store and everything were in glass cases. And if you were buying something, you didn't try it on. A posh lady came out and tried it on for you. And my mum used to scrimp all year so that when winter come, she'd take us to thingies and get us a duffel coat. And then, like, as I grew out of mine, our Lindsay would get mine. And that's kind of... Because you needed a big coat back then, didn't you? And I literally remember fighting over my dad's donkey jacket because it was the warmest coat in my house. And we used to throw it on top of quilt at night when we didn't have quilts then, did we? Just had hundreds of itchy blankets, a sheet,
Them
a
blue-
candelabra, what do they call?
them
Candle
blue
wick,
them blue thingy.
woolly blue blankets.
Yeah, blue blankets that look like it was knitted.
Yeah, these will all have had it. I tell you what you had. You had candy stripe bottom sheet,
Yeah.
one sheet that went on you, and then a candy stripe pillowcase. Then you'd get like your woolly blue blanket. Then your granddad's army blankets went on top. Sometimes they were a bit Navajo and had that
Scratch it.
that pattern. They were right scratchy then, weren't they?
Yeah.
And then anything else that you could find, including eiderdowns, went right on top.
The blankets with like a satin strip across the top.
Oh, posh, what were them?
It was just like a fluffy blanket. Well, scratchy blanket. But it had like a trim on it.
Yeah, it's an army blanket.
This
Like a
was pink.
grey.
No, this was pink.
Oh, your mum went to. I bet your mum went to Brentford Nylons.
No, God.
Everyone's mum went to Brentford Nylons. Don't stay. Do you know what I mean? Don't stand near fire in Uniter. Move away from fire in Uniter. Debbie, move from fire in Uniter. You're going to set yourself on fire. Oh, hang on a minute, Joe. If he's a sugar daddy, don't kick him out. I'm absolutely skint. Mark will look the other way. I'll just get sneaky. But oh, I'm trying to read what everyone's wrote. These are bloody brilliant. Sharon saying she remembers those things. It had like a satin edge on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's what I call a woolly blue blanket. Ours were like blue and they looked like they weren't actually knitted, but they had like holes in them as if they had been. And they had like a satin thing that went round them. But my nan was a machinist, so she could make a blanket out of anything. True story this. My dad worked at Boddington's and my mum worked at Victoria Wines. So they used to get a lot, but my granddad went in a lot of pubs as well, I must admit. They used to get a lot of them, you know them bar towels that you put on bow top? And over the years, because we were poor, my mum used to sew them together, right? So we used to end up with like these massive bath sheets, and they were for when we were on the beach or when we were coming back from like the woodlands with my dad in the car, so she could clean us off and stuff. So when me and our Lindsay went to Turkey in 1996, because we were poor, we took them because they were like, oh, they're going on beach.
Yeah.
And when we got there, the people in Turkey went mad for him. You know, because like they had like Man United on him and like John Smith and like Boddington's and that's where my dad worked. So he'd have all these names on and they were swapping them us for like leather jackets and stuff. Me and Lindsay took the sewing out of them faster than anything you've ever seen in your life. Yeah, we got loads of 501 jeans. Some legs were bigger than the other. Some didn't have proper zips on because we were in Turkey, weren't we? Like Man United tops with City on the back and everything, loads of rejects. We were well chuffed when we got home. My mum was a bit annoyed. Right, let me see. My mate can't believe we wore flammable 90s.
Yeah,
We had
now.
nylon was a whole thing, wasn't it? When nylon come out, it was like, look at that. You can get a nylon dress, you can squeeze it, wash it, put it online, don't even have to iron it. Man bought everything in nylon. You used to come out of your bed with your hair like that. Do you remember?
Yeah, would it?
I'm not kidding.
Just get electrocuted.
I'm not kidding. You'd be like laying in your bed like static, scared of doing anything, because I've always been static in me anyway. And they went through his phase of putting like a static bottom on, like a nylon bottom and a nylon thing. They still get them in Blackpool and places like that who are dead tight and won't change them. But they were on. You just got to move away from the fire. You're going to set yourself on. Don't put your night in here, the fire. Put your dressing gown on. Debbie, move away from the fire. That's all I ever heard. When our Mark were little, I should have said when one of the boys were little. I'll pretend it wasn't our Mark. When one of the boys were little, one night, he turned around and he was peeing in fire, putting it out. He was only little. Yeah. Someone saying they had a lemon and pink one. Our Lindsay had a full-on red dressing gown. She used to look like Michael Bentine's Potty Time. Not many people remember that. But yeah, she used to look like one of them in that tiny little thing. But yeah, where have we got to? Right. Choices of drink in the UK pre the 1990s were, are you ready for this? You could have cordial, mineral, or corporation pop. That's mineral. So mineral, for anyone not from North, is like soda or cola or Dr. Pepper. That's mineral, because that's like fizzy. Cordial is concentrated fruit juice that you pour water into. And Corporation Pop is water. And there is not a kid in England that has not been said, what do you need money for a drink for? This Corporation Pop in that tap. Yeah. So I think she's saying she's not heard that for years. Do you remember that, Vicar? What do you need money for a shop for? This Corporation Pop in that tap. You think them kids in America are having soda with like ice cream floating on top and watching it on Fonzie? Yeah. And all, if I want to get a drink like that, I've got to go and sit outside the pub and one of my uncles will get me one. Get us a bar of shandy while you're in there and a bag of crisp. Bet you used to do that. I should explain, lots of kids in the UK had to sit outside pubs growing up as well, because your parents weren't allowed to take you in back then, so it didn't mean they didn't go. They went, and you had to sit outside,
You have to wait out
and they bring you crisp and pop out. Not peanuts, because they're expensive. Crisp or pop, Deborah, that's your choice. Yeah, so, and don't try getting two out of him, because, ooh. Saying, what accent is this? I'm from the northwest of England, I'm from Lancashire. And the man's from Cajun land. I'm not taking the piss, I actually know where that is. My mum and dad used to go to Louisiana and where the Magnolia Plantation is in New Orleans every year. They absolutely loved it. They used to save all year and do that. And the last time they went was when Katrina hit. And they didn't, unfortunately, because my dad got ill, they didn't go back again. But they absolutely loved the States. My mum would not admit she was a sensitive, but she can go into areas and pick up on things. And she said she found Myrtle Plantation just because of the whole slavery thing. It was just too much. The energy of it was too much for her. But yeah, they absolutely love Louisiana. So yeah, next one. I don't know if the Americans will get this, and I'm not sure if you will outside the north. But back in the day, before supermarkets, you had the greengrocer would sell all of like your veg and your carrots, onions, potatoes. Butchers did your meat, fishmongers did your fish. That's what it was like. And there used to be what was called the pot shop for me. And that was the shop that sold everything from 4 candles, firelighters, metal mop buckets. If you needed it, it were in there. They used to have a little thing, and you'd buy a light bulb, and you'd take it over and test it. Yeah, that's all right, that one. He'd give it you back. That was the pot shop. And it always smelled of firelighters. Like, so when I smell them, it takes me right back. And there's the 2 Ronnies clip in there. 4 candles. You always do it to me. Yeah. 4 candles. Yeah. And it just, that reminds me of the pot shop. Oh, it's been hell for review. Let's see what's going on. Oh, and I thought it was a bingy daddy. I was hoping it was a sugar daddy. I missed my chance now because of Joe. It could have been someone's floozy. Mark, I wouldn't have done anything. I would have just accepted his money. I'd have been like, send me money for things. Like excessive things that I need, like gas and electric and food. Right. The other one, if you were poor, and not just if you were poor. Do you remember buying boxes of broken biscuits? Let's see how many say yeah. Someone's put getting the last biscuit in the tin. What been there for years, and it was covered in crumbs, and it was like fig rolls. My mother loves them. There's not a time in your life, is there, HB, where you ever think I could just go a fig roll? That's never happened to me. That.
See, I like a fig roll.
Have you ever had a moment in your life where you thought, I could just go a fig roll? And I'll be honest with you, man.
When I was younger, yeah.
I don't believe you.
Okay, then don't. I did.
So given the choice of rock from the seaside, fudge, any toffee you could have in the shop, you went for a fig roll.
Yeah, because I had them in.
You think you know someone, eh? She's still laughing at Corporation Pop. When I tell the kids, Fonda, they don't believe me. They're like, because my mum and dad made it out of the ghetto. I don't know what you'd call it now. They worked so hard. My parents worked so hard that they managed to buy their own house. So what they do is they bought the smallest house they could and they did it up. and then they'd sell it and do the next one. So I was born, the very first place I lived was called Rivington Lane. It was a really big posh house, and each of the rooms, it was called a rooming house. So my parents were teenagers when they had me, so that's kind of where they were. But they saved every penny they had, and then we moved to Joynson Street then. And Joynson Street was, it was a terrace, but it was a one up, one down. So there was one room downstairs, set of stairs that went up, and one room up top. So you shared downstairs and you shared it, and it didn't have a loo and it didn't have a bath. So loo were in back garden, and honestly, the bath was a tin bath that used to hang on the wall in the kitchen, and it also had one of them things above the fire. So that was the first kind of house I lived in. And then when we moved to Sutton Flats, which was the big modern place we went to, there wasn't any bathroom or anything like that. That got fitted like years later. So, but most people were poor like that back then. It was just, this just how it was, you know. Most people were like that back then. There wasn't a whole lot of rich people in our town. You just kind of got on with it, didn't you? Right, here's one for me. One I cannot stand. So I love the smell of firelighters. What I don't like is remembering the smell of the milk room at school. And for anyone who doesn't understand that in America, they used to come round every morning with these warm bottles of milk, that was so big, full cream. So like you had to get your, try and get your full cream up a straw is quite hard when you're a kid. So by about 12 o'clock dinner time, after it's been sat in the sun in the milk room, the milk monitor used to have to go in and put a straw in them all and bring them out. It used to knock me sick, but you had to drink it. It was a government law. So, I cannot stand the smell of it. But one thing I do love about that room was when we used to have parties at like Christmas, and I don't know how many people remember this, they'd give you a note. So one kid would have to do like jellies, and another kid would do crisp, and then another kid would do cordial, mineral, or corporation pop, and then someone would do 12 cupcakes. So it's like a bit of a bring your own kind of thing going on. You had to sellotape your name to the bottom, right? So none of these dishes went missing. Now they're all Tupperware, and they're like, you'd set your jelly in, and underneath it'd have Debbie Crossley like taped on, and then you had to have a bowl with your name taped on, a bit like prison, and then I have a fork with your name on, and that went in school with you that day. I'm not kidding, Emma. That went in school with you that day. Your mum would be at the gate like that, walking, waiting for you when you come out, making sure you got all that. Have you got me dishes? Yeah, Mum, I've got your dishes. Yeah, but I used to love that, mate. Yeah. We had Father Christmas come one year at Beulah. I remember we were only tiny. We were in that library room, Mark. And one of the kids just... I don't think he'd ever seen Father. And it was only... You could tell it was like the caretaker who goes round and pours sand on sick when you're sick. It was only him and a Father. Oh my God, the ruckus it caused. Nobody believes me when I tell them this. We had a teacher at school called Mrs. Rabbit. Yeah, really, Mrs. Rabbit. And if you were naughty, she made a tail out of toilet roll tubes and like feathers and anything she could to make it ridiculous. And I am not lying, I wore it many times. She used to pin it to the back of you so everybody in the school knew you were naughty. I'm quite sure that that's abuse. But yeah, that's what Mrs. Rabbit used to do. Yeah, she'd be like, right, she'd get a big safety pin out like that, or you'd have on a kilt, and you had to wear it for the rest of the day. Yeah, so she put it on me, and I should run around like I was a unicorn. I was special, innit? Like, oh, I've got the tail. My mum would come and you've got the tail again, you haven't you? And I'd be like, it's very tempting, yeah. Our geography teacher used to chuck the blackboard rubber at us. Mr. Pope.
English teacher did it to me once.
Yeah.
She was a good shot.
Did she get you?
Yeah, right, yeah.
You wouldn't be allowed to do that now, would you?
She got it back. Twice as quick.
Mr. Pope, never happened to me, but Mr. Pope used to hit the lads in class with a badminton racket. He was mean. Anyone who's on here now, he went to Beulah will be like, yeah, he was it. He used to hit the lads on top of the head with a thing. And you'd be like, can you imagine
Our
that?
headmaster used to pick us up by our sideburns.
But you're it? Oh, by your sideburns?
Yeah.
You don't even have sideburns when you're at school?
What about? You used to go like that, just pick it up by him.
Oh, I'd be in loads of trouble with me, wouldn't I? Yeah, ouchies, don't you just put. Dad's our teacher threw a kid at the blackboard. See, anyone
Was he
listening to this
small?
back will think we're all making it up, won't they?
Was he a small kid?
I don't know. Dazzle, was he a small kid? I don't think it matters, Mark, when a teacher grabs you and chucks you. I don't think at that point you're thinking, am I 4'11" or 5'1"? Probably the last thing on your mind. You're just going to crumple and save yourself, aren't you?
Prepare for impact.
Oh, there was some. We had our headmaster was right out. I'm not kidding when I say he was out of the army. He was one of them. He was a brigadier or something, and he told us every morning at enforced assembly. Yeah, I say I don't even have a religion. Why have I got to go and sit in there and sing? And she'd be like, because you have to, Deborah. Everybody has to. It's like, but I don't go to church. Why do I have to do that? Well, you have to, Deborah. Everybody has to. Explain to me why. I don't get it.
What's the need?
Why am I learning? Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, and my mum won't let me go through a church door. Doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, and there was one song that the kids used to sing. Do you remember at West Liver? And it had the word United in it. Now remember, we're all from Manchester, and he used to drive the headmaster mass, and we'd all go United like that, and he'd be like, right, start again.
Not doing it.
And then that just used to make you do it even more. Yeah. Oh, Lavender said she got smacked for not getting the sums right. I remember that. She used to whip me with the teacher in our school. She used to have like a wooden rule, and she'd whack you with it. She'd whack me on the head and say, stop daydreaming. I'd be trying to puzzle something out. Or, you know, like trying to work out how to spell a word or something. Yeah. And she'd freaking whack you like, stop daydreaming. Yeah. Oh, let's get off that one was awful. Now, in every town across the UK, well, I should say in every country in the world where you have a Muslim country, they have a cry, and it brings people to prayer. And in England, in the 1970s, that was called the pink, because every Saturday at 6:15, I would hear, Debbie, right across the flats, go and get us a pink. So how many of you remember that? The pink was it was a newspaper that had all the football results or the racing results, or one of what I was going to get to in a minute was we used to do spot the ball, didn't we, in the pools. So I'd have to get in the queue with the old men at the shop called the Jug and Bottle, and like think on back then you used to take these stone jugs and they could fill them up. They used to tell them what they wanted, like sherry or whatever, and they'd fill them up for him, and they'd get this paper called a pink. And like that's how I'd get me spends. My dad would send me to go and get the pink. So I used to put bets on for him and his mates when they were in pub. I'd go in and like my dad would like just nip over to Fitzwarren and put that on for us, Deb. And like I'd get to keep the change. So that I was telling you about it the other day when that became a regular thing. Then I made sure I stopped in there when I was going past, like a bit of extra spends. And we used to be able to take bottles back to the shop. So as a kid, when your mineral ran out, you took it back to the shop and you used to get money for about 5p or something for it. So like me and our Mark had a bit of a, it was like, we was almost no, not a battle. We kind of worked together to conquer. Like, so like he'd have one street and I'd do the other and be like, Missus, have you got any old bottles? And like kids were lazy, weren't they? So like we'd get quite a few of them, take them to the shop and take them back and then go and do the route again kind of thing. You're forgetting our Mark had a paper round at 10. He was getting up at like 6 in the morning, doing 8 stories and all that there. And my mum used to get us up with him. Yeah, and he was dead clever. He used to say, right, I'm the manager, so I'll count the papers. You go and drop them on first floor. So he'd have us running up and down, and he'd just stand at bottom. And then when it was Christmas and they used to give you money, he wouldn't take us out that day. So he'd go around, everyone used to give you they used to call it a bonus, didn't they? Here's your Christmas. Here's for Christmas, and he'd give you 10 bob or something. But he wouldn't take us out that day. He'd go out, so he collected all the money himself. I told you, good to see you not been in for a while. Christmas bonus for the milkman. Oh, you missed it. It was right. As a milkman, do birds still peck bottles of milk? I need to know. Right, I'm getting near the end now. Right, do you remember spot the ball and play in the pools? So, for anyone who doesn't know, spot the ball was they used to take a photograph of last week's football, and it wouldn't have a ball in it, and you had to put a cross where you thought that ball was going to be, and each cross cost you more. And then if you got it right, you won the money. So everybody did it. Like Saturday tea, everybody sat down for like spot the ball, and the pools, didn't they? And the pools was you had to guess like I suppose it's like an Aki now. You had to say like United had beat City by 3-0. Or like Rovers had beat Celtic by this, and you had to guess them, and the more you got right, the more money you got. So if you won the pools, that was a big thing. So back then you'd win like 100 grand, which was...
it's like the lottery now.
Yeah, like the lottery. So people had moved to Worsley and stuff, be like, oh, she's won pools there, she's got a fur coat, she's moved out. So it's like a mini lottery kind of thing. But when you went to work, if you worked in one at factories or in offices and places like that, they used to have what they called a diddlum. Now, Mark didn't know what that was. You said, what did you call it? A sweepstake?
Yeah.
So a diddlum is where every week a little brown envelope comes round and you pick a number off this sheet. So a bit like the lottery, but you only pick one number. So say you pick number 13. If that's the number that comes up, you get to keep all of those little brown envelopes. So you'd get your wage pack in a brown envelope. You'd open it and your money would be in there with your little piece of paper. And if you won the diddlum, you'd get the tiny one and you'd be like, oh, get up, mush. Yeah, so you've got extras, so that's used to play the diddlum. So when we were young girls, when we were like 16, 17, 18, if you won the diddlum, you'd go into town and you'd go to like Cuma Brothers or something and you'd buy yourself a new outfit, like whatever was out that weekend or week, because you get like rah-rah skirts and stuff like that. So I used to love the diddlum, but I never won one. Never ever won a diddlum. My nana won one once, she said, when she was 18. And she paid to have a photograph took, because obviously back then there was no cameras, was there?
No.
And her and Jed were getting married, so she wanted a photo of herself in a wedding dress. And the night before she had the photo took, it went blackout and she walked into a lamppost and her eye was like... So this is a beautiful picture of her.
With a shiner.
Yeah, and she's got a dress on that's made out of parachute material. And every girl in the street wore it eventually. So some wore it before and some wore it after. And it was heavily embroidered across the front. It was absolutely beautiful. And then each bride would change it.
Yeah, alter it.
Depending on what the fashion was when they got married. Isn't that a lovely story? Yeah, I remember her telling it, man. I was like, wow, Nan. And she said, oh, so mad, Deb. Yeah, she said, like, I saved up to get a photograph took, and the night before I went blackout and I blacked my fucking eye. So she's got like loads of makeup on, to cover it up. But you can't really tell now, it's an old photograph, but the story she used to tell me about the war was unbelievable. They didn't have an air raid shelter, so they used to run to the wash house. And the wash house was like, nobody had washing machines back then, not even twin tubs or out like that. So you'd go to the wash house, it would just be this big place and it'd have loads of big laundry in it. So like massive scale workhouse laundry. And there was literally baths in there, so you'd pay and have a bath there. You'd have to pay for like soap and a towel. We always went to my nana's because my nana had an indoor bath. But yeah, most of the cousins did. So because everywhere back then, I was born 20 years after the war ended, and they were still bombed out sites in Salford because it was heavily bombed during the Second World War. Because they were trying to bomb the gasworks in the Manchester Ship Canal. So we all played on derelicts. We used to call them crofts, and a croft was like where there'd be rows and rows and rows of houses, and they bombed it and it'd be flat. They just bulldoze it all down and flat. So as kids, we used to find things from war, like bullets, and our Mark once found a German helmet on dead tunnels, and there was this story that a German train, something had happened on the train and it had smashed together, and you could find stuff down there, and we actually did find something. We used to have this brass. We didn't know it was a bomb. We had this, it looked like a bullet about that big, and it was made of brass. And now think on me, Grandad was a scrap man. So first thing we did was like, Grandad, look at that. And he was like, oh, for fuck's sake, that's an incendiary. So like nearly blew everything up. And then our Stephen did, he blew a car up on Croft messing about. And they got like these, I don't know what they were like these landmines, and they were throwing stones at him, and it blew the car up.
Yeah.
But that's how bad it was there. It was like, and they just built the homes on top of it. So there was a lot of degeneration at the time. Now, BBC own it all. And Manchester City Centre, you can't get a house there now for love of money. It's like $1 million apartments and everything. So my granddad had like 7 scrapyards down there. He came out of the war. He started with an handcart, and he made his way, and he bought yard after yard after that. and they compulsory bought it all. So you couldn't even argue it. Like, they just come one day and bulldoze the lot. People's houses, their jobs, everything. Salford Council just took the lot. Took the absolute lot. So it was like, you fight in a war and you come home and you make something of yourself, and even that's not good enough. They take that off you.
Yeah.
And you said they'll build on it. They'll build on it and sell it for millions because it's so close to Manchester city centre, and that's exactly what happened. And he said when he was a boy, they used to walk the cows through there to take them to market. So it must have been rural in his day and age, in his time. And my mum said she took my nana down there when my nana were really old, and she were upset because she couldn't recognise it. And she just was like, this is not Salford. And my mum was like, it is, Mum, I'm sorry, it is. And it was like, she couldn't get it. It just didn't look the same. Me and you had to go down there the week, didn't we, for a Christmas present. Oh, it were awful. I don't like being in crowds. I can't do crowds, and I can't do lots of people, and I can't be in the car when there's like cars coming at me from all directions. I end up like that in front of the seat. I just can't do it. I find it, that last car accident we were in really threw me. Oh, I'm just having to read whatever Heather put. 1 second. First bit out of it. All right, she says, I have a friend who's in Ireland. She was telling me about putting money in a box to get gas in the home. I'd never heard of it before. In meter.
Yeah.
In meter.
50p meter.
You had to, 5 pence was a shilling. So you used to get 12 shillings to a pound when I were a kid. Before we went metric, you used to get 12 shillings to a pound. So it was like, do you know those things you get at the fair where you put your money in and you turn it and a ball comes out the bottom? It was like that, but you put your money in, turning it, clunk, and then your gas and your electric would go on. And then most of us had coal fires. So there's different kinds of coal. We weren't allowed to burn wood because of the creosote, but people did because they were so poor and they were so cold, and there was coal shortages all of the time that people did burn wood. We had to. There was nothing else that you could have done. And I can remember a time when my parents had burned anything that would move, books, anything from down in cellar, out the attic, anything, just to keep warm overnight to get to the next day. So coal comes in varying degrees of greatness. So if you're posh, you can afford pop a coke, and that's dead warm, dead quick to light, like your barbecue coal. Then you've got your coal, but we all have chuck on. It'll burn for a while, and it'll get you warm and all that, but it's not top grade. And then you've got the coal dust, and they will bake. What they do is they wet it, put it in a square, and they make a coal brick with it.
Yeah, out of coal stone.
So you would get loads of kids would go to the coal yard, and they would get all as much. Hey, mister, can we have the dust? Hey, mister, can we have the dust? And we'd fill carts up with it, especially in my dad's generation. They'd fill carts up with it, and he'd make it into bricks at home. And then they'd burn them that way, kind of thing. You can do it with newspaper as well. Some people do it with newspaper, don't they? They flatten it right down till it goes dry, and then you've got fire bricks. That's how they did it back then. And like, because it was the war, we were short on everything. Because like all of like the cast iron gates and the ones around the park at Bewley, they all got cut down, and they went to the war effort. So lots of people's like we didn't have gardens, but like backyards and that, you had to dig up any paving that you had, and you had to grow food in it. It was just, we had to. People forget we're a tiny island in the middle of the Atlantic, aren't we? And back then we weren't shipping a whole lot of gear in, and what was coming in through the ports. And Salford was a major indoor port to a massive, like, you got London, Birmingham, Manchester, that's how it goes, they're like the biggest cities. So it's an inland port that comes into a major city, so they used to bomb the hell out of it. And unfortunately, that's what it was like back then, living like that. And I was incredibly lucky, because every weekend, whenever we could, they would pile us all into cars and vans, and they would just take us somewhere. So we was always camping somewhere, or we didn't caravan somewhere, or we stayed somewhere. And then we'd come back to town, and they'd all work again for the week. So sometimes my dad would take us and drop us off, and he'd go and work, and then he'd come back and get us like at the end of the week, my mum and my nan and that. So it's just like, I had the best of both worlds, and I was talking to Mike about it before. So for all I live really in a city, in an absolute war zone, and you're forgetting at the time, it was the Troubles. So Manchester was being bombed on all fronts, wasn't it? So I've got uncles and cousins and all sort in Ireland fighting amongst each other over the border. And then I've got aunties and uncles on this side who were there as soldiers and really weird. And then grandmother's generation, they're all Irish after that. So it was a really strange situation to be growing up in that. And then I started work at 16. So I came straight out of school. 6 months after I saw that monster, I came out of school and I went to secretarial college for about 6 months, and then went straight into work. And my very first job, I used to finish at 5:30 every night, and I'd get there onto the bus, and it'd take me like an hour and a half to get home. And this one day, I was just fed up. I'd finished my work, and I was absolutely fed up, and I was done. And I was just like, I'm going home. And he was like, yeah, you might as well. There's nothing needs doing. And as I got on the bus and left, the Arndale blew up. And I'd have been waiting for my bus that day. I wouldn't have been here. So I was like Swinton when the bomb went off. And I'll never forget that. I was only a young girl. I was only like 17, just before I got married. So I was really young. And then even when I got married, I used to work in Adverts. I had to go all the way to Manchester and then get a different bus and go all the way. It used to take me 2 hours on bus to get home at night. It was absolute murder. But people couldn't afford cars and that. Me and Pete had out when we got married. We didn't have bleeding pots of piss in. We were wed at 18, weren't we? Dog Tanyan. Oh, let's do programs. We've got another 10 minutes left. Let's do programs, right? Programs that you bat think. Go on, it's your turn. You throwing at me. My dad used to say she thinks she's Penelope Pip. Stop, look at her hair. Lipstick on, she thinks she's Penelope Pip. Stop. Wacky Races, that was, wasn't it? What was your favourite cartoon, mate? Mine was Josie and the Pussycats. Captain Caveman.
That was one of them.
That was a good one, that, wasn't it? I like the American ones. I like the American, because you used to get Looney Tunes and stuff, didn't you, when we got programmes from America?
Yeah.
And like,
So, yeah.
You like the Pink Panther and it annoys me. I can't watch it.
See? I do like it. But I've liked it since I was a kid.
I loved... Oh. Na 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 na. Yeah, 1 banana, 2 banana, 3 banana, 4. I used to love that one. Brian said it used to be a guy in it, didn't he? Brian goes, size of a bear. And he'd transform. I used to love that. That was bloody brilliant. Wacky Races. Banana Splits, that's it, Vicky. Yeah. That's it, Banana Splits. Captain Planet. Do you know what we used to watch for all Americans out there? We used to, honest to God, Sunday afternoon was film, when it was always a film. So everyone in the UK would sit down, Sunday afternoon, there'd be American film on. So like when I was right younger, it'd be Westerns. So it was always like...
Yeah, my dad used to always watch the Westerns.
Yeah, How the West Was Won, Magnificent Seven. We used to watch I, Chaparral. And what's the other one called where the Ponderosa was in it?
Wow.
Oh, Blue was in it. Oh, he's gorgeous. He had blonde hair. No, not I Knew. It was a show. It was on every week, like Casey Jones. I, Chaparral. Was it that?
I'm not sure.
Someone will say it, you know. Bonanza. There we go. There we go. Nice one, Stephen. Bonanza. Yeah. Do you remember Casey Jones? Do you not remember that one, Matt?
No.
I am that old, and you know what I'm like, my memory, I don't forget anything. I remember being a kid and watching an American puppet show, and it was called Four Feather Falls, and it was a Western, and it was black and white. And it was very similar to Muffin the Mule, he was in, which is not a sexual suggestion. It was an actual programme when we were children. Should I tell them about... What was that kids' programme in the UK that had the most disgusting names known to man? Captain Pugwash. I'm just going to let them catch up with me on here. There's a kids' programme, cartoon used to come on at 5:30 called Captain Pugwash. One of them was called Seaman Stains.
Yeah.
And one of them was called Master Bates. And as a child, I never worked it out until I was an adult. And then we used to have a programme called The Magic Roundabout.
Oh,
and one of the characters on it was a rabbit that was stoned out of his face. He was off his petunias, wasn't he? Gone. Whitney Houston, we have a problem. We've lost all communication. Douglas, that's what he was called. He used to have an ear that would go over like that. You'd ask him a question, he'd be like, oh, this passes the Cheetos. Yeah. It was a warning of what was to come, but we never took any notice if he did it. Brilliant one, I've just remembered. Mr. Ben.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Ben could be anything he wanted. He used to walk down the street
You wanted.
with his hat on.
Mr. Ben was just the tailor.
And he'd go in. You go into the tailor's and he'd say, go in that room, sir. And you went in and you could be anything you wanted. So it was like Quantum Leap, but cartoon style. So every week someone was something else, wasn't there? So they'd be like the Lone Ranger or something. And the next week it'd be on again, Mr. Ben. He used to take me back there. I used to love that. When you walk down the street, you'd be like, who's he going to be this late? It was like Quantum Leap, wasn't it? Like when you're like, oh, who's he going to be? And then he'd be like, oh, he's on the moon. He's on the moon. Fantastic. We didn't have telly programs like the Americans. Like the Americans had channel after channel after channel, didn't they? So when I was growing up, there was two. There was BBC One and BBC Two.
Late night seller.
Well, we didn't have late. It went off at 11 o'clock, didn't it?
I mean, later on.
Oh, when we were older.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were younger, it just used to, the telly went black at 11 and it used to just go like that. And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller to a little dot and then it'd go, eee, and the telly would go off. Then you'd have to wait in the morning till news come on. And then, for us, it was Granada, so it was ITV. So it was like a third channel. There was 3 channels to choose from. But we didn't have like a kids channel.
No.
So kids programs would come on at like when you were having your tea. And then the news would be on afterwards, and like then you had to watch what your parents were watching. And even like weekends, we didn't have a lot. We had like the double deckers in the morning, didn't we? And Swap Shop and things like that. Chris Tarrant. So you had kids programs on the morning and the weekend, but Saturday afternoon when racing were on, it was all they had was play. What was that? Play away, away, play away, 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 play away. That was it. That was aimed at 2.5-year-olds. And the scariest dolls known to man, Hamble the doll from Play Away had several people in the basement. I swear to God, it was like the most haunted doll, and everybody would be like, "Oh, Big Ted, Amber wants to take you into the basement," and then you'd never see Big Ted again. There was Little Ted, I suppose, but just it was all a bit much for me. What window shall we look? There's only 4. There's 5 days in a week, and every week it's the same window. Why are you asking? Getting touchy now. I bet I'm getting hungry. What time you on?
You're definitely getting hungry.
Tomorrow's People. That was good. I really like that one. Children of the Stones. That was a bit like Stig of the Dump. Children of the Stones. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Tomorrow People was really good. But I remember watching Tomorrow's World. Do you remember that? And they were like, one day you're all going to listen to this on a CD. And we're like, get out of it. There's no way. Tellies are about like 8 foot wide, weren't they? Tellies back then. So push it if you wanted to change it. I am so old that we used to turn the television over on the windowsill. There's a button on the windowsill, 1 channel, 2 channel, or the radio. So that's how that were it. That's all you got. Yeah.
That's you lot.
That's you lot. So if it is all right with you lot, I'm going to go and get something to eat. Because I had my insulin at like 5 o'clock, so I'm going to need to go and eat something. But I hope you've enjoyed it. So I'll try and come back on Saturday again, and we'll do it same. We'll have half an hour where we talk about the premiere, and then we'll have half an hour of nostalgia where we talk about anything you want. So if there's something you want to mention, pop it in the comments, and I'll make a note of it. And when I come back next week, we'll jump it in, because I'm sure we'll all have memories now tomorrow. Be like, oh, why didn't I mention blah blah? I'll jot it down and send it to myself on Facebook. I'm the most untechy person known to man. I really am. But yeah, I'm going to have a cup of tea now, and I'm going to have some, because I'm not allowed cakes anymore, so I'm going to go and have some shredded wheat or something healthy like that. But I will be back at the same time, the same night. Good night, everyone. Thank you. They were absolutely brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah.
We had a cracking crowd in again. Good night, everyone.